I'm sorry. I messed this all up here. I messed this all up. Anyway, I am having. Listen, last night I clicked on this profile for us, and then I went live last night,
Oh no.
and I messed it all up. I'm obviously having technical difficulties. I got to fire my producer. He's just an idiot. So let me say welcome to my very special guest, Dr. Abby. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you would, well, let me get some announcements out the way here. So I do have an audio podcast for anyone who's not aware of this. So you can go over to Dr. L's podcast wherever you listen to audio podcasts at, and let's see, you can listen to old stuff of me talking about police related issues and things along those lines. So make sure you like those as well. I'm rebuilding my police oriented podcast, changing from LMH Consulting Services to Dr. L's Breakdown. So we're talking more about police issues over there. I try to do that at least once a week. I think that's pretty much it for my announcements. Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. I do appreciate it. Make sure you say hello so that we can acknowledge you. And now I want to hand it over to Dr. Abby. If you would take a moment to introduce yourself and tell about who you is, who your people is, what you do, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here. I'm excited to dive into these conversations. I thought a lot about how to answer this question, but I'm going to keep it simple and brief because there's a lot about my past I think is relevant to who I am. But who I am today is a wife and a stay-at-home mom of two toddlers, and I help women who want marriage to land the man of their dreams.
And do you help them to become stay-at-home moms or
No, if that's what they want, what I really help women to do is to um, grow into who they need to be in order to have the life they desire to have. And that's the journey that I went on, which is why I'm here today.
Very good. So that this is becoming a big issue nowadays, this whole relationship type of stuff. How and why did you get into the relationship stuff? I know that you do that, but why did you get into it?
Yeah.
Tell us about
So
that.
this is not, I didn't grow up like, I'm going to be a dating coach. That was not on my bingo card at all. I went into, like, I became a psychologist actually, and I became a psychologist to study identity. So the stories we tell about who we are and what that means for our lives. And while doing that work, I was actually in an emotionally abusive marriage myself. And I finally started to apply that work to myself to help me shape my identity and live a better life. And so that's why I got into sort of the personal development aspect of the work that I do. And I'm a child of immigrants. I studied how Black young people, especially children of immigrants, shape their identity in a way that helped them live better lives. And so I had to apply my own work to myself to exit that marriage and become the best version of me. And in that process, I went through a huge transformation. I dated better, I lost weight, I leveled up my income and my job. And I also found God through that process. And everybody around me was like, Abby, what did you do? Like, you're glowing. How did you become who you've become? Because he saw the difference in who I was before and who I became. And it was through women I knew asking me questions about how I was able to level up myself and my life and my relationship to marry my now husband that I started to give women advice. And they were like, Abby, you've got to share this with other women. And so I started getting invited to talk at events and do workshops. And that's how I got into dating coaching.
Okay, so you open up a whole big Pandora's here. I told you that I shoot from the hip here. So,
Of course.
so you're a child of immigrants. What
Yes.
from where? From where?
Nigeria. I was
Nigeria.
born there myself. Yeah.
Okay. I don't
Yeah.
detect any accent there. So, but maybe I'm just terrible at it. But okay.
So my family moved to Canada when I was 2 years old. So that's
Okay.
why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So, and so talk a little bit about identity, and that's really what I wanted to talk to you about: character, personality. We'll get into the dating coach stuff later, but
Yeah.
I really want to talk about character, personality, and if you could talk to us just a little bit about that, particularly being from an immigrant going to Canada, coming to the U.S. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So that's a really big question. So our identity, I like to define it as the story we tell about who we are. And those stories come from a lot of different places. They come from the world, they come from like our parents, they how we interact with other people. We construct these stories. And so it's not like who you are is fixed. I like to think of identity as a project. I didn't come up with that. I'm quoting somebody else who used that term. But your identity is a project that's constantly being constructed. And so you have a choice about who you're going to be based on the actions that you take every single day. And so as an identity researcher, I was really focused on how can young Black people in particular, and especially those who are children of immigrants, construct their identity in a positive way in a world that tells us all the negative stereotypes about Black people, essentially, and limits our opportunities as a result of those stereotypes. And as I mentioned earlier, I found God through this process of discovery because when I entered graduate school, I was an atheist. And I was really thinking about identity from the psychology perspective, which is it's made up of who you say you are and who other people say you are. And it was while working on my dissertation that I was like, well, who does God say I am? And that was the first time I had really asked that question of myself. And it's part of why I exited academia. I felt like it was missing this critical piece of who God says you are, which also goes back to character. Like, what kind of character do you show and who is defining that character? Gosh, I could talk about this forever, but I think your question was really about like defining identity.
Listen, I was definitely enthralled. I'm taking notes and everything here. So I want to say hello to some people. I do want to come back to that because I think that's really important, in particular for Black folks to really try to understand their identity. And you're under the impression that, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I'm saying that you're saying that identity is something that's constantly evolving, and it's
Yes,
obviously within the context of the environment.
yes.
Okay.
And it matters because how you think about yourself shapes what you do, and what you do shapes your life outcomes, right? If you have a particular identity that says, I can't succeed, then you're not going to do things that would help you to succeed. And then you're going to end up having a self fulfilling prophecy of not succeeding and then blaming your environment.
I definitely believe in self-fulfilling prophecies and all that. Definitely. I want to say hello to some people. Hello to Yoli. Let's see. Oh, now she says hello to Dr. L. Okay, all right. So my guest gets preferential treatment there, I see. Rhonda, what's up? Hello to you. Rhonda is very good about making sure people hit the like button as they step in the room. So if you have not hit the like button, make sure that you do so. Deborah Hutchison, hello. Ike, hello. Good morning to you. New York Chocolate. Let's see. It's early in the morning. People's at work, so true. Hopefully, we are evolving every day. So let me play the video that kind of caught my attention. To you, I'll play this video here, and we can talk about it. So, and you're making some great distinctions between identity, personality, and character. So I really wanted to do that. And I got to get people in the room here by putting up dating and all that kind of stuff. But I really am interested in personality, character, and all that. So so let me see here. Present, share screen, chats. There we go.
Should I mute my mic at all?
No, you're good. All right, so it says, but the truth of personality is the least important factor when it comes to whether a man will make a good husband. What actually matters more is character, not personality. Personality is how someone expresses themselves. It's their hobbies, their sense of humor, their music taste, the big five, whether or not they are extroverted. Character is who they are at their core. It is how they treat people, how they respond under pressure, whether they walk with integrity. Character is what determines if a man will protect your heart, keep his word, and love you sacrificially. Personality determines whether you click on the first date, and if you've ever been ghosted or slow faded by someone you thought you clicked with. You know, clicking on the first date doesn't prove anything. So focus first on character, not personality. Once you know his character is solid and you've actually compatible, the next thing you should care about is the physical attraction. If you aren't attracted to your husband, it often leads to deep resentment. You deserve to be with someone who gives you good butterflies, and your husband deserves to be with someone who actually desires him. I find my husband so attractive I can't even stay mad at him. When we disagree, I want to make it right. I want to reconnect. That desire helps us work through things faster and with more grace. And believe it or not, I almost missed out on him. His personality didn't match my list. He likes heavy metal. He considers himself a Slytherin.
Slytherin, it's a Harry Potter reference.
All right. Well, that tells. Well, I guess that tells you what about a little bit of my character, right? I don't know anything about that, but those surface level things said nothing about his character, and so I'm glad I looked deeper. So the man you find physically attractive. So go for the man you find physically attractive because he deserves a wife who craves him. Okay, so break that down for us. That was the video that kind of caught my attention, and I'd like for you to kind of break that down for us.
Yeah,
Personality and
wow.
attraction.
So it's funny because I wasn't planning on making that reel at all. It just sort of like came to me and I posted it within like 15 minutes. So it's crazy to see how it's blown up. But I was thinking a lot about how what women are told in dating versus what actually works in dating. And what women are told is that they should give every guy a chance, and if you're not attracted to him, it's fine. And what matters is personality. And I think that that advice can be misguided. And I'm talking from a personal experience here because in my first marriage, I was not physically attracted to him at all. But I had bought into that narrative of what matters is personality. He was charming, he was funny, everyone seemed to like him. But as I got to know him more deeply, I realized the character was lacking. He didn't actually treat me well behind closed doors. He was very gregarious and outgoing and fun but in public and in private. He was a totally different person. And so I learned firsthand the difference between character and personality in that marriage, and realized that if I actually found him attractive when he treated me poorly, I might be more inclined to want to repair, maybe, but I might be more forgiving, but I wasn't because I was like, this ugly man is breaking my heart right now. I was so pissed, and I think that a lot of women, unfortunately, are sort of shamed into this narrative that if you want to be attracted to your husband, it's a bad thing, and the truth is that you need to have an attraction, some level of physical attraction for that initial spark and connection to get to know somebody deeper. And you want to get to know that person's character. I wanted to get to know my husband more because I found him very attractive. And so when he asked me out again, I was like, okay. Um, because even though the personality for me at the time felt a little off to me, um, I was willing to give him a shot. And like that's just the reality of it. And I think we can shame women for that, or we can actually embrace that, not every person is made for every person. And it's okay. That's okay. And since making that real, I've had women reach out to me to say, like, what if I'm already married to someone I'm not attracted to and they feel trapped? And that's not what I want for anyone, to feel like they're trapped in a marriage. And the truth is, men also want to feel desired by their wife, and they should. So let him find the person who's going to find him desirable.
Okay, very good. So character is what you do behind closed doors, whether you
Yes.
really treat someone nicely. And I think that in our email, or at least the message that I sent you, is that years ago I had heard a preacher say the same thing. The character behind closed doors, I think it was Miles Monroe, who
Yeah.
had said the same thing, that your character is really who you are behind closed doors. It's, you really want to know somebody's character, go through their search, their computer search history, right?
Absolutely.
You'll really get to know what people are about, right?
Absolutely. So like
And then,
personality is who you are when you're with other people, and your character is who you are when you're alone. And when you have integrity, those two things should be like in alignment, right? Like I should be the same person. I'm hesitant to use the same person language because we're all different people with different people, and that's okay. But like I should be in congruence with the same with how I am with other people as who I am when I'm alone. And we get caught up in the personality aspects of things a little bit too much. So, for example, a person might say they value honesty, right? Sure, you can value those things, but if you don't actually live out those values every day, then I wouldn't say you have an honest character. Somebody who constantly lies to you and gaslights you and manipulates you, but then publicly is like, I value honesty. Like you would say, like that's their personality, what they value. But if they don't live out those values, then that's not their character.
You're the expert in that field. I don't even know if I would say it's their personality is really just a liar then, right? I mean,
That
if they
too.
okay, all right. um, let's see. Hello to Better Love Movement. Integrity character is king. Ooh, the line is a hard pass. All right. That's my buddy right there, Better Love Movement. So let's talk a little. I want to kind of digress a little bit, and we'll come back to the relationship stuff. So talk about the difficulties that people of African descent, and I know that this is true of people of other ethnicities as well. Asians have this problem, Hispanic people from Latin America, whatever, however they're defining themselves, have this issue about trying to assimilate, trying to get their personalities to be in line, to get their to develop their sense of self-worth in this country or in any white dominated country.
Mm,
How to talk a little bit about that and your struggles with finding yourself.
mm. Yeah. So what you're talking about is this process of like acculturation. Like how do two groups of people like become more similar or like each other after being in continuous close contact, right? And as an immigrant, it it really is difficult, especially when you're a child of immigrants, because it's one thing to immigrate to the United States or Canada as an adult. You've already shaped your identity, it's fully formed. You have a solid sense of who you are. But then when you are growing up here and you're being told that who you are is criminal or who you are is unintelligent or who you are is dangerous, whatever it is, that becomes a core part of your psyche. But then your parents don't quite understand what you're going through because they didn't grow up with those kinds of messages. So it is really challenging, and there's a lot of cultural conflict between children and their parents when they immigrate here. And that's been a big problem. And for me, it was compounded by the fact that I we moved a lot as a kid. So when we came to Canada, we lived in New Brunswick, which is on the East Coast, kind of near Maine, I guess. And then we moved to Toronto, and we moved out of Toronto, and we moved back to Toronto. So like we were always constantly moving. I had been to a lot of schools by the time I was 11 years old. And so I didn't have a grounded sense in my identity. And there's this phrase in psychology that research is me search. We tend to research the things that personally affect us. And I became an identity researcher because I literally did not have a sense of identity that was grounded in anything. And that was really difficult for me growing up. And it wasn't until I became a Christian that I was able to ground my identity in Christ and finally feel like solid footing.
So you mentioned something that's really, what was that term again you used for people who research? I couldn't hear it. What did you say?
Research is me search,
Or
M-E
research
search.
is research.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear all, when I went for my doctorate, right? I was hearing all kind of crazy stuff. Like I had this one person on my, well, he wasn't on my committee, but he said, listen, you got to research something you don't care about. That way you don't have any, yeah, it was, I looked in the same way. Like, what are you talking about? So,
Right. People would
yeah.
ask me like, "Oh, aren't you too close to this?" I'm like, "Who do you think is better to study this?"
Right. That was his philosophy. Like if you're gonna research that, you'd be too close to it. You won't really be able to be non-biased about it or whatever. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So
Yeah.
so can you speak to those people who are come here to America, particularly of African descent, whether they're from Caribbean or from the continent, and they come here and the parents don't understand the difficulties that you just explained, trying to define themselves, trying to assimilate to this culture, and then you know their parents, and then they end up looking down upon Black American culture. You probably heard that a lot, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So what's up with that? What's up with that?
Gosh. Yeah, I think it's important to understand that whatever, like first and foremost, the United States um, is dominant in the world in terms of media, right? So whether you're in Australia or Africa or wherever, like we get a lot of American media everywhere. And as much as Americans are frustrated, like Black Americans are frustrated with the portrayal of Black Americans in American media, that's what we're seeing all around the world. And so because you're here, you can see that like the world is not like the media. Like as a person who lives in the United States, I don't watch the news, but when I see the news, I don't look at the news and say that's how Americans are, right? Versus people in Canada look at the news and they're like, why are Americans so crazy? Why do Americans hate what's going on in Florida, right? Like Canadians think like based on the news, Americans are crazy. And I'm like, I live here and Americans are not like this. The news is just going to show you the extreme, you know, outliers, right? And so it's important to understand that what people are seeing in the media is negative portrayals of Black people, and they don't have the actual personal interactions to counteract those negative messages, unfortunately. And so it's easy to buy into those negative messages when that's what you're finding in the media of those people act like this and those people are like this. And that's just the unfortunate reality of American media.
Very good. So y'all people of other ethnic groups, black people out there, stop looking down upon us. So
I think
we ain't all
eventually
like
people start to realize, though, as the more you live in the United States and Canada, the more you realize, like, oh, it is a big problem how people are portraying Black people as a whole, but also like generational Black Americans. And the more you live here, the more you start to see, like maybe you were wrong about your assessment when you first got here.
very good. I had a chess buddy. We used to play chess together. He's from Jamaica. We used to go back and forth about that. Brother, you don't like it so much. Why are you here? Why are you playing chess with me? You know, so but he was a cool dude. All right, so I wanted to ask so you said you were an atheist, and then you found Christ, and that helped to shape your personality or character, or helped you kind of redefine yourself. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. So that's a great question. So first and foremost, the Bible talks about being made new in Christ, like, you know, having a new heart, a new mind, and all of that. But when it comes to character, I think what I think of is the meaning of character, like the original Greek word, the word that character comes from. I don't know how to pronounce it in Greek, but the word means to engrave, right? So it means to cut in furrows. And so it's this idea that your character is what is engraved in you. And I really love that definition because there was a YouTube video I watched once with Ravi Zacharias. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a Christian apologist. And he told a story that I thought really illustrates this concept of the importance of character in Christ. There's a parable, not a parable, there's a story in the New Testament where somebody asked Jesus if they should be paying taxes to Caesar. And Jesus says, someone get me a coin. And someone brings him a coin and he looks at the coin. He's like, whose image is engraved in this coin? And they're like, Caesar's. And Jesus says, give to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. And Rabbi Zacharias was like, whose image is engraved in you? Because if you belong to God, then his image should be engraved in you. That should be your character. And so it's my long-winded way of saying that by becoming a Christian and hopefully becoming more like Christ, I'm going to, in the actions that I live out every single day, be engraving in myself more of the character of God.
So how did you come? I mean, so in Nigeria, were your parents non-believers? Were they non-believers when you moved to Canada? Are they non-believers today? Because a lot of times people follow the faith of their parents, their culture. So how did you come to that?
So my parents were Christians, or have always been Christians as long as I've known them. Their families,
As long as you've known them.
I mean, their families were colonized, right? And so like colonization came from Nigeria. They went to Christian or Catholic schools. My mom was Catholic growing up. And so they were Christians before I was born. And I grew up in the church, going to church every week until I was 18. And see, now we're going into a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I didn't have a great relationship with my parents. And that's part of why I rejected Christianity to begin with. And I rejected God. And I became an atheist, like strongly so, as a teenager. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I started to revisit my faith.
You said when you were, my cat is doing stuff. You had my daughter's cat that lives with me
Oh.
that she won't come pick up. Your
It's your cat now.
no, 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 I'm not claiming it, right? That's Christian speak, right? I'm not claiming that. It's my daughter's cat that she won't pick up, that she abandoned here. So she so you didn't start to re-examine everything until you were in your 30s. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes. And it was as a result of my failed marriage, was seeing what marriage without God looked like and seeing just sort of the mindsets that came with all of that and recognizing that like there's emptiness for me here, so I need a better worldview because my worldview was empty, and my worldview led to me being depressed and anxious and having really poor mental health. You'd be surprised how many psychologists have poor mental health.
I would have bet
um,
almost 90% of them, quite honestly. You talk about research is me search. I definitely think
right.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, it was really through coming out of that marriage. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about Christ. I was thinking about how can I get my power back, and I was thinking about how can I never end up in an abusive relationship again? How can I date better? And I came across first like the law of attraction and manifesting and the secret, the movie, um, and really found that it worked. And I was like, oh, cool. And that helped me to be more spiritual. And through that, becoming more spiritual and being more grounded, I started to investigate other sort of ways of knowing spirituality, which brought me back to church and allowed me to really see Christ in a whole different way.
That's an interesting statement. The last part there. So, um, it, because of your relationship with your parents, that caused did that? You don't have to get super detailed, but was it their actions that kind of said, I don't want anything to do with that? And then when you had this bad marriage, you were looking for something different. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It was in part their actions, but also I've always been a very inquisitive child, a very curious person. I'm always asking why and what. And
Why
I
do you do that?
understand what's that? Why
I'm
do I do
joking.
that? I know why I do that. I need answers. That's why I became a scientist. I was like, I need answers. And I'm a very direct person. And for some people, when you ask why, they look at that as challenging their authority or, you're being disrespectful. It's like, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I just want to understand what you believe and why. And I never got those answers, unfortunately. I asked the wrong people for answers about God. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I was like, well, I should say, like in my teens and 20s, I did do that searching on my own. I went to the internet to do that searching, and the internet is an ugly place. And so, the answer I came away with was there is no God and I don't need this. Those people need Jesus because they're crazy. I don't need that. And I discovered that I did need that, 10 years later.
Okay, very good, very good. So, we can get back to the dating stuff now. I just wanted to dig into that a little bit there. So you mentioned, so what are the first things that a lady should be looking for when you talk about looks are important? What you said, looks, personality, then character.
Character, looks, and personality.
Okay, so how do you character? So the first thing a woman should be looking for is a character.
100%, yes.
Okay,
Because
so
you're not going to have a happy relationship with someone with poor character.
okay, so it's poor character, then personality.
I think you're looking for someone who has strong character, good character, things like integrity, things like they treat people well, um, things like they mean what they say what they mean. Like those are the kinds of qualities I think are important to look for in a person. And honestly, to be honest, I always say the three C's. It's character, compatibility, and consistency is what you should be looking for in a partner. But I'm always talking from the perspective of women looking for a man. So it's probably true the other way around, but really you want someone who has good character. If they have good character, then asking yourself, like, are we compatible? Do we have a similar vision for life? Do we have similar life goals? Do we want the same things? And you don't have to want all the same things, but are your views and your lifestyles and desires compatible with each other? And then third is consistency. A lot of women end up in bad relationships because they're falling in love with a man's representative in those first 6 months. Like people can be whoever they want to be, show you a particular personality to get you to be attracted to them. People can love bomb you. People can say, I'll never hurt you 2 weeks in. But you don't know any of that is true until you get to know him over time and you observe his consistency in his character. So I think character, compatibility, and consistency are key. and also being physically attracted to the person. And as you get to know somebody, you can absolutely become more or less attracted to them physically. Um, there are people who I used to think were very attractive, and I got to know them and I was like, you're not that cute, you know? So like you can get to know someone and really start to see the beauty in them from the inside and it shows on the outside. But really the three C's I think are critical.
Very good. I agree with that. Character, compatibility, and consistency. I was just trying to get your list for it was character first, obviously, and then it's personality, how they, and then looks. I was just trying to.
So for
Am I
me,
missing?
it's personally it's character and then looks and then personality. I think
Okay,
that personality can be important, but I don't think it's the first thing that I would look for. I mean, it wasn't the first thing that I looked for when I was dating.
okay. So you definitely define that. This becomes very important because looks that being number one. So how does a woman, because that's who you mostly work with, right? Correct? Or do you work with
Mhm.
men too?
I don't work with men, but men do ask me for advice, and I'll give it if I can.
So, um, so you tell them to look for character. How do they get to know that? I mean, you get approached at a comedy club, a bar, a gym, parking lot, all these different places where women say, "Don't approach me," right? So you get approached by in these different places. Is obviously the woman's going to look at his physical presentation first, right?
Absolutely, yeah,
Or
for
even
sure.
his personality first, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you notice first, right? And so I think it comes down to, do you want to get to know this person's character or not? And that's a choice that every woman has the right to make.
So I guess I don't want to belabor this, but I'm just saying the character is the most difficult and longest one it takes to know. But unless you really like their personality, how outgoing they are, that compatibility feature, and then their looks, it seems kind of difficult to me to try to get to the character, which is going to take a little bit of time
Hmm.
because people are stuck at the looks.
Right. Yeah, I think that ultimately it takes time to get to know somebody, which is why I recommend people don't get exclusive so quickly. I think people tend to like, if someone asks you on a first date, that doesn't mean you have to marry him. Like, just go on the first date, you know? Go on the first date, and if you like him and you wanna see him again, go on the second date. But I think people get stuck thinking about the future of like, "Well, if I go on a first date with him, then I'm gonna have to break up with him in 4 months because he's not really like, let's not even think about 4 months from now or 10 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now. Just think about, like, do I wanna get to know this person at all? Go on that first date, get to know them, and if you wanna keep getting to know them, go on the second date. And do that with many people because unfortunately, I think it's a problem that we tend to date one person at a time from the very beginning, and we don't get a chance to get to know different people in different contexts. And I think that, when I was growing up, I never went to a church that like helped young people to get to know each other. But I think there should be more of that. Like, what are spaces that people can get to know each other outside of a dating context? Because you're right, I don't know a man's character who's approaching me in the grocery store. But if I go to a youth group every week and I've been knowing this person since I was 15 and we've been going here for years, I get to know your character over time by just virtue of being friends. So I think that there could be more of an effort to help young people intermingle and get to know each other as friends. And there could be more of being in the present moment and just going on a date with somebody without worrying about, down the line what's going to happen.
I can appreciate everything you just said there. Is it still, you said, talk about, not marrying for looks. That was one of the things you first said, 15 minutes ago or so. Is that still a thing where women aren't marrying for looks?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. Like people are told like women are told we should not care about looks. Women are told that you should just care about personality, and personality is more important than looks. There's a man on TikTok who he goes around interviewing women and he's trying to help dispel myths in the manosphere, I guess, and show that women aren't as shallow as the men who are, I guess it's called black pill, who are in the black pill community think, right? And so he'll go up to women and be like, what's more important, looks or personality? And the right answer is personality. And these women will respond like with personality. And I think that it's a misguided attempt to um, make men feel better about, feeling unattractive
I haven't
because
seen any of
ultimate
those. The ones I've seen are I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh, yes,
Uh,
go ahead.
the ones I've seen, the women all say personality. I mean, I'm
That's what
sorry,
I'm
they all say
saying.
looks. They all say
Oh, they all say
looks.
looks? Oh, it's so
Yeah, the ones
interesting.
I've seen like that. I haven't seen the ones you've seen. So
Interesting, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was really where that reel came from, was seeing one of those videos and being like, he's going around and all women are saying personality, and that's the right answer. And I'm just like, I don't think so. I think personality is deceiving. And I think that you need to get to know somebody's character first. And it does matter if a person's attractive to you or not. Because like I said, with my husband, I find him very attractive. And if he does something that like upsets me, or we have any kind of like disagreement, I have an internal desire to rectify that situation. I have a pull toward him that I wouldn't have if I wasn't physically attracted to him. And in my first marriage, I didn't have that pull. I didn't have any desire, and he resented that. Rightfully so. He should be desired by the person that he's with. And I think that that pull is necessary for marriage. And it boggles my mind that Christian women especially are told they shouldn't care about looks, but it's like, well, you want us to also procreate with this person. Like, shouldn't we enjoy it? Shouldn't we desire our husband? Or is sex just simply an exercise we do to have children?
Okay. So how many ladies, because of, are you how long you been married?
Almost 4 years now.
Okay. You're still newlywed.
Yeah.
The ink is still wet in your in your signature there. So um are you aware of what's going on? You know, you said the red pill space. You said the black pill. Are you aware of the red pill space, black manosphere type of stuff? Are you aware of
Not
this?
really. I just hear from other people talking about it. So women will, talk to me about like, what if he listens to Andrew Tate or whatever? Like, I don't know these people. I don't listen to their podcasts.
Okay. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of ladies who are now becoming more atavistic, more animalistic, more. They want the guy who's good looking, he's got to fit certain criteria. Have you heard of 666? Have you heard of that?
No, but I can imagine what it is. Can you help me understand it?
Okay, so it's not the mark of the beast, although some would say that it is, but it's you got to be. So they're not going to look at a man.
Six
Some
feet tall,
women are
six
saying,
figures.
huh?
Is it like 6 feet tall, six figures?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly what it is.
I've
Six
never
feet
heard of this
tall,
before, but what?
6 feet tall, six figures, and the six pack abs, and there's another one six that I'm not going to mention, but there'll really be four. So, have you heard? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? I
I've never
mean,
heard of that term, but yeah, I'm aware that women have certain preferences in men for sure.
so because of that, because of their more being more selective, how many more men are being overlooked because who have great character, great personality, but because of these different standards, how many men are being overlooked in your estimation?
Mm. It really is impossible for me to know. I think that there's an assumption in that question that I find interesting, which is that women's preferences exclude some men, and therefore it's bad. But men also have preferences, and their preferences also exclude some women. But that's not a problem for most people, right? So I think
I
that
think that it is. I think that it is a problem for some. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
well, what I was trying to say is that, people have different preferences first and foremost. Not everybody, like my husband is 5'6". Like I love my husband. I think he's very attractive. And I was one of those people who was like, he has to be 6'3" or whatever. Like, and yet I married a man who's 5'6". Like people's preferences, number one, can change. And number two, people are allowed to have their preferences, and that's okay. Go find the person who was made for you. And I think a lot of men put themselves into a trap where they're overly focused on things outside of their control. They're overly focused on, well, women don't like men who are blank. Don't date those women. Find somebody else who will like you for who you are. And if you're overly focused on um, what other people think of you, that's actually like a character flaw. It's something called the external locus of control. If you're the kind of person who everything is everybody else's fault. I'm single because women won't give nice guys a chance. I'm single because I'm not 6 feet tall. I'm single because you're actually not that desirable of a partner because of your mentality and your mindset.
I
My advice is really to focus on things that are in your control, because there like not everybody is, Brad Pitt, right? But we all have gifts given to us from God. Focus on those gifts. If I were to look at other women and say, well, I'm not blonde, so I can't be attractive to men, like I would probably not. I did my hair today, I did my makeup today, like I work out, I put effort into how I look. If I was to have the mindset that I can't be attractive because I'm black, I can't be attractive because I'm dark skinned, I can't be attractive because, and then listing all these reasons why I can't be attractive, I'm not going to put effort into how I look, and then I'm not going to be as attractive. I find that a lot of men, when they talk about not being attractive to women, my first question is, what effort do you put into being attractive? Because you're not going to make yourself taller, but you could go to the gym. You're not going to make yourself taller, but what do you do about your hygiene? So many men that I've dated have really poor hygiene. Like, I don't want to kiss you when you haven't brushed your teeth yet. Like, is that it's such a low bare minimum standard bar that they're not meeting. And I don't think women are asking for too much. I think that instead of complaining about what women's preferences are, men need to focus on elevating themselves and going for the person that's meant for them. That's my personal 2 cents.
listen, I'm going to clip that. I absolutely I love that. Focus on what you can focus on, right? Stop worrying about what's out of your control. So, yes. So I think that the issue is that so many men feel as if that they are being friend zoned. Well, here's another problem that's been being addressed, is that these guys are in the friend zone. Are you familiar with the term friend zone?
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right, it means different things to different people. What would you say that it means?
I think when people talk about their friend zone, they're saying that women have decided when they meet you if they're going to be open to a romantic relationship with you or not. And some men are placed into the friend category just by virtue of being a nice guy or not good looking enough. That's what I think people think when they say friend zone.
Yeah, I would add to that a little bit. I liked your definition. I would add to that a little bit and just say that they continue to expect boyfriend treatment. Come with me on vacation. Um, Come over here and hang this TV in my house. Come cut my grass. Seriously, this is the thing. Take me out to dinner from time to time. Still expecting that type of listen to me when I complain about this other man who's treating me wrong. Meanwhile, you know that this man has romantic interests in you. So that's kind of. I don't think there's anything wrong with being friends or friendly. If a woman lets you know that you're not it, okay, just move along. As you said before, just date someone who likes you, work on yourself, and all that kind of stuff. So, what the complaint is that they are really a good guy. They see women who are dating bums, people with poor hygiene, pookies and ray rays. Are you familiar with that term? Pookies and ray rays. Okay, so they're dating pookies and ray rays, getting their heart broken, getting traumatized. Meanwhile, here's a nice guy who is 5'8" and great personality, great character, who's not been given the chance because he doesn't meet these physical standards. So that's a lot of guys' frustrations.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I have a lot of thoughts. So for me, this is why I coach women, because I'm like, I want to help women to navigate these situations better, because I don't know how to talk to men about this without sounding harsh. But if you're if you're helping a woman like move and taking her to dinner and all these things, and you're not her boyfriend, like why are you doing that? Like did you ask her out? Did she say yes or no? Like I find that like some of these men who complain about being in the friend zone haven't put themselves forward as a contender in the first place. And we all have a choice about how we're going to respond. Like we don't. I'm back to focus on what's in your control. You don't have any control over a woman asking you to do things for her, but you do have control about what you accept. If my friend was like, Abby, take me to dinner, I'd be like, no. Like you have a choice to say no. And I think that if you're going to be friends with someone who treats you this way in a way that you don't like that's just more about your character.
I agree. I 100% agree. No,
Oh, I
seriously, I
wish I
do.
could give advice that was more empathetic, but like,
No, I think that sometimes guys got to hear the tough truth. Stop going after women who are not in your financial bracket. Stop going after women who don't have the same morals and values as you. Stop going after women who
yeah.
just want to use you. You made your romantic interest known. She rebuffed it. Keep it moving.
Right, so if
So
you're my friend, if you don't actually want to be my friend, like
right,
I've heard the opposite term of friend zone, which is girlfriend zoned, or like romantic zoned. Like you put me in a box now that I can't be your friend when you claiming that we're friends. And so I didn't friend zone you. I thought we were friends, but you are secretly hoping that I'm gonna break up with my boyfriend, or you're secretly resentful that I'm giving these other guys a chance and I haven't given you a chance that you haven't even asked for. Like there's a lot of assumptions in this. When I broke up with my husband while we were dating, actually. I broke up with him, and in that time period, um, there's a lot of reasons why I broke up, but I realized I made a mistake, that I actually had a good man in front of me, and I wasn't ready emotionally yet. I wasn't emotionally available. And it was in that period that I really accepted Christ into my life and felt like I was being pushed to not date for 3 months. And so when he at the time was like, can we talk about what went wrong? I explained to him, like, I'm just not ready to date, but I'm going to be single for 3 months. And if in 3 months you're still single and you want to date, I'd be open to it. And in those 3 months, we really became friends. We actually would, it was during COVID. And so we would do the Netflix parties and things like that and get to know each other. And when we started seeing each other in person, when it was allowed to start intermingling with people, he actually did come over and help me move my furniture as a friend. He didn't expect anything from me, but I asked him if he was willing to, and he was willing to. Like, I would expect that if he didn't want to do it, that he would just tell me no. But a person who feels like they're being used by a female friend in that way means that they don't have strong boundaries. So you actually reveal more about your lack of boundaries than anything about what women are doing incorrectly.
Very good. Very good. I don't see any questions from the audience there. I did. So Anita from Better Love Movement, she asked me to do a show one time, and I did it before, and it got a lot of hits about men and our hygiene. I didn't know this was a problem. I didn't know that this was a problem. Seriously, I didn't know. I didn't know that this was a problem. So you've experienced this, and you live in Michigan. Is that where you're at?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was in Michigan. I'm in Maryland now.
Oh, in Maryland.
But I've
Okay.
experienced this everywhere. Like, some men really don't have great hygiene.
God, dog. Wow. All right.
Yeah. And
That's
I think so. It's funny because this came up in couples therapy with my first with my ex, and our therapist was like, you know, women have sensitive noses, and I think a lot of men don't realize how sensitive our noses are. Like, I literally can smell what you had for breakfast this morning. Like, we can smell things, and it's just not appealing to approach somebody sexually in some contexts.
you can smell what people haven't had for breakfast.
Not always, but like my sense of smell is really, really strong. Like I remember one time my sister coming home from school one day. This is when I was in high school, and I was upstairs and the door was open to my room, and I heard her coming through the door, and I was like, "Does somebody have chocolate?" And she was like, "Yeah, I had chocolate at lunch." Like you can smell things.
Somebody else from Michigan. Maybe I was dating the same person there. They was having a huge problem with her ex. I mean, geez. All right. Can physical attraction grow? Can you not be interested in someone because of their physical attraction and then it grow?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think physical attraction and chemistry, which is something slightly different, can absolutely grow over time. And it can just build and build and build. Like when I met my husband, I thought he was attractive, but now I'm like, he's the most handsome man on the planet. Like I'm very attracted to him physically because I've gotten to know him over time. And I think the opposite is true too. You can get to know someone and realize, I don't find you attractive anymore physically because of your character.
Mm. Can character and personality change?
Yes. So part of what makes personality is that it's relatively stable over time. So it is relatively stable, but it absolutely can change over time. And I think that people can work on personality. So for example, I'm a very introverted person naturally. If after this I'm going to take a nap because I get exhausted from social interactions. Not because there's anything wrong with the person I'm interacting with, but I just feel drained when I'm with other people. Like I recharge when I'm alone. But I've been able to work over the last 10 years to be more outgoing, to come off as a little bit of an extrovert, and to have positive interactions with people, to be more charming and more likable, all those things. Like those are things you can work on and change. charisma is something you can work on and change. And absolutely, your character is changeable. As I mentioned before, your character is what is engraved in you. And what is engraved in you is the things that you do every day. So it's the small actions you do every single day. And you can choose to do a small action today that will help you to build a different kind of character. So, for example, um, back in the day, I used to floss sort of like sporadically. I wasn't like super on point with my dental hygiene. And when I went on my level up journey, I was like thinking about, well, what kind of woman do I want to be 30 years from now? And as I visualized that kind of woman, I was like, that woman definitely flosses. She definitely takes care of herself. And it's in the little things that help me to boost my confidence, because each time I would floss, if I got to a point where I was, I was getting ready for bed and I'm like, oh, I'm too tired to floss, I think to myself, well, I'm the kind of woman who flosses every day. And that would get me to floss. And so it's iterative. What you do shapes your character, and then your character shapes what you do. If you think of yourself as somebody who's honest and you have the opportunity to lie about something, if you say to yourself, well, I'm the kind of person who's honest, it's going to make you want to tell the truth in that moment. And so we all have choices about who we're going to be every single moment. And that moment can start right now where you make a different choice.
Should people change for themselves, or should they change to be with someone to get a job? I mean, what?
I personally believe that people should change for themselves. I'm not a fan of trying to change somebody, whether you're a man or a woman, trying to change somebody that you're dating. I don't think that change is going to come from somebody else. People are going to change for themselves, and that's what makes it a real change. And I've noticed with men that I know personally, where they change for a girl, they change their personality to get her hooked in those first few moments. They love bomb, they act like they're super romantic in the beginning, and then their true self comes out over time. And then you wonder, well, where did that guy go? When the guy who was so loving to me in the beginning, the guy who bought me all those gifts in the beginning, the guy who and made all those promises, right? Or they take care of themselves while they're single and want to attract the next person, their next victim. And then once they're in a relationship, they stop all that effort. So I think it really is important for people to make changes for themselves and to allow people to make changes for themselves.
I'm just reading some of these chats here. Chemistry can grow, especially if a person is emotionally mature.
Yes.
Speak of, do you address the emotional maturity that's going on, or lack of maturity, immaturity that's going on in this day and time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. From a personal standpoint, even though I was attracted to my husband when we met, I didn't think we had any chemistry. And I thought like, oh, like there's no chemistry here, because I'll talk about why. But it took time for that chemistry to grow. And once that chemistry grew, it was more than I'd ever experienced. But it wouldn't have grown if I hadn't given it a chance to get there. And so the thing about chemistry is it really comes from a feeling, and our feelings can be deceitful, right? How you feel is not necessarily the truth. And a lot of how we feel in relationships are the patterns that we were playing from our childhood, or patterns that we were playing from some past relationship. So what I had to learn as somebody who is tends to run anxiously attached is that a lot of what I was calling
Tends to.
chemistry,
I didn't hear that. Tends to.
I tend to run anxiously attached. Like I tend to
Oh,
be like anxiously attached. A lot of what I was calling chemistry was actually me mislabeling my feelings. So there's something in psychology called excitation transfer. And I know this is very jargony, so I want to like break it down. But the idea is that when you feel the sensations in your body for a particular reason, we can misattribute or give a different reason for those feelings in our body that is actually incorrect. So, for example, if you are watching a scary movie on a date, your body is going to have a physical reaction to that fear in that scary movie. That fear reaction that we have in our body, the fear response, is things like being short of breath. It's the fight or flight response, which actually takes all the blood that kind of out of your digestive system. So it feels like your stomach is kind of queasy. You feel this tingling sensation in your fingers. Like these are all like the fear response physically. But what we call the fear response physically is how we also expect love to feel. When you're short of breath with a partner, when you're in love, you got butterflies in your stomach. Oh my God, I'm in love. All those feelings also a fear response. And so a lot of what people are calling chemistry is actually their fear response being activated from this familiar traumatic pattern of relationships. I know that was a lot, but I hope it makes sense.
So, but that what you just said can sound kind of frightening to people because I'm having the same response as being scared in a movie or seeing a tiger run down the street and this person that I'm meeting, right?
Right. You got to ask yourself, like, is this love or is this my fear response being activated? And a lot of it is, and like your fear response, that it's that anxiety, right? Relationships are anxiety inducing. And when you have anxiety, you have the same fear response as if you were being under physical attack. And so your body can't, your brain can't differentiate, like, am I being chased by a bear or am I just afraid of being abandoned or rejected right now? And so all that fear response is what that is. And with my husband, I didn't feel that fear response. In other words, I felt safe because he's a healthily attached person and a healthy person. And that safety feeling, when you're used to the fear response of like the butterflies and like the roller coaster of the relationship, it feels boring, right? And that's part of why I broke up with him. Was 3 months in, I was bored, and I was so used to the toxicity of like up and down relationships. So it takes a lot of work to move through those anxious feelings in relationships and actually get to the heart of what's healthy so that you're not replaying the same toxic dynamics. And
Now
so
we're
that
getting
being said, chemistry can sometimes be a fear response, which is why I say let chemistry grow, because sometimes that chemistry can actually be an indication that you're repeating a pattern or about to repeat a pattern with a potential narcissist, with someone who's avoidantly attached, with somebody who's anxiously attached, whatever it is. And you actually need to get to know this person more. And once I got to know my husband and realized he was a safe person and I fell in love with him, that chemistry grew over time. It took a longer time to get there because I was used to dating men who had a lot of chemistry in those first few moments. And then it became a roller coaster over time. With my husband, chemistry took a long time to grow, but then it far exceeded whatever chemistry I thought was good chemistry in the past.
so what you just said, what you're saying right there is so important because a lot of people are attracted to going after not only the physical attributes that I talked about before, the 666, but they're also going after this toxic roller coaster and not looking for the butterflies and looking for all this other type of stuff
Yeah.
versus getting to know someone for the long term. How do you suggest, in particular for the Black community, that we really kind of defeat this narrative? Because a lot of us who in the manosphere adjacent, that's what I call myself, manosphere adjacent, how do because we're talking a lot about this, right? Because our community unfortunately goes, this is where we get a lot of our ladies looking at the Pookies and Ray Rays versus trying to get nobody likes it when I say that, right? but versus going after a guy who's really going to be a good father, a good provider, a good mate. And if they're overlooking these guys because his pants aren't sagged quite low enough, or because he doesn't have a mouthful of gold teeth, or because his hat isn't on backwards, or whatever they're looking for, right? Just other stuff that doesn't matter, then there's a problem with that generates within the community. This is where we get the baby mama drama and all these other things that we got going on. How do we really defeat that?
It really comes down to self-awareness. It's becoming aware of your typical patterns in relationships. It's also becoming more emotionally grounded. I think that a lot of people don't have emotional regulation skills and they let their emotions drive their behavior. But when you understand how to regulate your emotions, you're not just taken by the early promises of whatever someone's saying in the very beginning of the relationship. You really have to be it's a process of learning how to have discernment, learning how to vet people and realizing like how do you actually pick apart what they said versus what they really mean, and who this person is versus who they're presenting themselves to be. And it's a process of learning how to have emotional regulation, being present in the moment. I actually have a series on my YouTube, and I'm hesitant to bring it up because the videos are bad. This is when I first started getting on the internet sharing content.
I didn't know you had a YouTube. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the videos are bad, but the content I think is valuable. My delivery is not so great, but on my YouTube channel, I have a series that I call Level Up Where You Are. And I break down the 11 steps to actually level up your life and your relationships. And it's what I did to level up. And it starts with focusing on the things that are in your control. And then I go through all the different ways that you can actually date better through building your character, through learning how to regulate your emotions, through practicing mindfulness, and through seeking God, and so on and so forth. And I break down sort of the science behind each and every one of those things and what the vocal backing is for each one too. But essentially, I think everyone needs to focus on making themselves healthy first. Like it breaks my heart when I see women too talking about like the dating pool sucks and there's no good men out there. And I'm like, don't worry about the dating pool. Don't worry about who's out there. Worry about yourself. Focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Focus on regulating your emotions. Focus on who you are becoming. And the right man will be attracted to you when the time is right, you know?
Okay. Um, I want to get to the last thing here about the nice guy problem, and this goes to black man is fair. This point here about the last sentence there also makes men call them simps. Have you heard that term, simps? Have you heard
Simp?
that?
Absolutely. People call
Okay.
my husband a simp all the time. I'm like, because he treats me well and I'm happy. Sorry.
Okay. All right. They call him a simp because he does what? Because he dotes over you? Because I mean, what?
So, I mean, not in real life. This is all people on the internet, right? They see what I post and then they're like, well, your husband is a simp and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, we're both happy. So, like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm a stay at home mom. We have a nanny. We just had somebody mowing our lawn. My husband paid off my student loans when we got married. Um, like he pays, like he takes care of our family and he loves on us. And I'm happy and I'm thriving. And I think when people refer to men as simps because they love women, like at the end of the day, like I don't care about the opinions of men that I wouldn't want to be married to anyway. Like I'm gonna enjoy my life with the man who treats me like gold, you know?
That was well said. You're not going to care about the men who you're not going to marry anyway. That was gold. That was good. I want to for all the simps out there. So I want to put this up here. So nice guys, they finished last. What's up? Do nice guys finish last, or what's going on in your
Guess it
opinion?
depends on how you define nice guy. Um, Unfortunately, every man I've ever met who calls himself a nice guy has turned out to not be a nice guy. And I think that what people are saying when they say nice guys finish last is that they feel overlooked by society, which I think is valid. But I don't think it's true that nice guys finish last. I think that it depends on what race you're running. If you're running the race of sleeping with lots of women, then yeah, nice guys finish last. But why should I, as a woman, care that you're hurt that you can't sleep with lots of women? Like, I'm looking for my husband, and so I'm gonna look for the best man for the job. And I think that some people who consider themselves nice guys, when you get down to their character, don't actually have very good character.
But this brings me back to the maturity question I was asking you before about, here's another thing that is manosphere talking points here is that, these guys spend a lot of time being nice, and the ladies aren't looking at those guys. And then later on in life, they change and then want the nice guy or the friend zone guy or the guy who's not trying to sleep around or whatever. Um, that's problematic to a lot of men.
Yeah, it is. I think that unfortunately, the reality is that, like, what's funny to me about this sentiment, though, is that they're blaming women for this, not the men who are manipulating them into these relationships. The reality is that being nice is not a character trait that makes a good husband. Being nice is not not a fruit of the spirit. There's nowhere in the Bible that tells us we need to be nice. It tells us to be kind, to be gentle,
Mm.
to have self-control, to be loving, peaceful, faithful, all those things. Nice is not a characteristic that God was like, you should be nice. There was never a moment in the Bible that says that. So I think a lot of people are misguided in what they think that they need to be in order to be in a healthy relationship. But like I said, I usually hear this sentiment from men who want to sleep with lots of women and haven't had an opportunity to. And have you ever watched The Big Bang Theory?
I watched it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't watched it in a very long time, but I do remember specifically, for those of you who aren't familiar with The Big Bang Theory, it's about four physicists who are quote unquote nice guys and a
One was
hot
an
girl.
engineer. One was an
One
engineer.
was an engineer. And a hot girl moves in across the street or across the hallway from two of the physicists. And the entire kind of first couple of seasons is around like, will this hot girl give this nice guy a chance? Um, And what ends up happening, I don't know what happens at the end 'cause I stopped watching the show, but in the beginning, he ends up dating her. And when he starts dating her, he cheats on her. And he's cheating on her and he's excited about it. He's like, oh, wow, I've never had the chance to have two women before. This is exciting. This is a man who considers himself a nice guy. And this is a sentiment that I'm seeing in the nice guy community. They think of themselves as nice guys, but only because they haven't had the opportunity yet. And so it comes back to, again, character. What would you do if you had the opportunity? I don't want a man who doesn't get women because it means that he hasn't had the opportunity, and who knows how he would act if he did. It's very easy to say in theory, if I looked like Brad Pitt, or I don't know why I keep calling him Brad Pitt. If I looked like so and so, I would I would treat women better. Would you? Or have you just not had the opportunity to cheat yet? Have you just not had the opportunity to lie and manipulate and deceive yet? So I think that there's a lot of things that we need to unpack about this nice guy sentiment, because some nice guys are not so nice once you date them. And if the nice guy needs to become an a-hole in order to get women, then that says something about his character, that he was not nice to begin with. He was actually kind of an a-hole and he's doing whatever he can to manipulate. And so I think I wish that men would stop trying to manipulate women into relationships. I wish that they would focus on being better men, on exhibiting the fruit of the spirit. I think it's Galatians 5:22 to 23. I quote it all the time, which is how I know that off the cuff. But look at the fruit of the spirit and ask yourself, like, is this in my life? Because God never asked you to be kind, or he never asked you to be nice. He asked you to be loving, peaceful, faithful, have self-control and patience and all those things. So focus on fruit of the spirit instead of being nice. That's my I'll get off my soapbox.
No, listen, I can appreciate that. I definitely listen. I'm all about men self-improving and stop complaining and really try to work on yourself and to become the best version of yourself. And I appreciate what Ashley Oganda says. A man who is kind but has the ability to be a monster when necessary to protect his family is what is desirable. You agree with that statement, sentiment?
I think that's really interesting. For yeah, yes, to a degree. I think that you don't want a guy who's nice to everyone, right? Um,
But she
if
said
somebody
kind.
hurt, yeah, kind. So what was the question? A man who is kind but has ability to be monster is fair. Right. And so, if someone is about to hurt your family or hurting your family, then you want somebody who's going to be a protector of you too. And I think that nice guys, quote unquote, won't say anything. They don't have boundaries for themselves, and so they're not going to have boundaries for their family either.
Very good. So I want to run through. Are you good for time? We've been on an hour. Are you good for time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I want to add this to the stage here, and this comes from your page. How to spot the nice guy. So nice guy energy, man of character, opens doors but gets mad when you set boundaries, respects your no without pouting, avoids conflict to keep peace, leads with honesty even when it's hard, says I never hurt you 2 weeks in, puts effort into building trust, does nice things for you expecting something in return, serves you out of the goodness of his heart, apologizes just to stop you from being upset, owns his mistakes and grows, mirrors your opinions to keep you happy, has convictions and lives by them, becomes whatever you want him to be to win you over, knows who he is and stays consistent, seeks your approval to feel validated, seeks God's will in relationships, compliments you constantly but actions never match his word, honors you with his words and his effort. When he says he loves you, when he says he loves you, you question it. When he says he loves you, you know it in your soul that that's true. Your intuition is your guide. If something feels off, don't ignore it. So that's that. What's up, Garrett? I don't want a guy who can't get women. Do women want men who can get other women?
I mean, from a research perspective,
From
yeah,
a
people,
research perspective and from a from a real world perspective, yeah.
yeah, like the research does show, like, if you see a man with women find men more desirable who are in relationships with women. That's the truth. And it's because someone else has done the work of vetting him for you. unfortunately, or for better or for worse, I guess.
Oh, well, that was well put, right? For you. Somebody else, let me
Yeah.
go steal this guy because he's obviously. All right. So thank you so much. Last question. I think this is the last question. I tend to lie about that a lot. That's my character. Are you advocating that people give someone a chance who are they and not they don't have the butterflies, they don't have that initial attraction? Are you advocating that they would give that man a chance, woman?
Absolutely. I think that we can get stuck in how we want things to look. Part of the reason it took so long for me to to be exclusive with my husband and to accept that, like, okay, like, I'm gonna date you seriously, was in part because he didn't come in the package that I was expecting. I was like, I want my list. He's gonna be this, he's gonna be this, he's gonna be that. And he wasn't those things, but he was the things that I needed. And so I think it's important to be open to maybe what your answered prayer is something that you don't think is in a package that you're not expecting. So you're expecting your answered prayer to look exactly like this, and God's like, I have something for you, but you need to be open to receiving it. And so I do advocate that you give people a chance. And ultimately, it comes down to, are you curious to get to know this person? If the answer is yes, go on a date. No one's saying you have to go on a second date or a third date or a 12th date or marry this person. That's the trap that I found myself in before, where I felt the pressure to keep going in the relationship. But it means being able to know yourself and have standards and have boundaries, knowing that you're not going to be forced to go out with someone you don't want to go out with. So if you want to go out with a person, if you're curious in any way, shape, or form, just go on a date. And if you want to see them again, see them again. If you don't want to see them again, you don't have to see them again. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think people can be a little bit more open minded at the beginning.
Very good. How many men should a woman be dating first couple of dates, juggling? How many would you recommend?
I don't think there's like a number in particular. I think it's just about being open to dating different people until you're exclusive. At the end of the day, you're going to keep dating. The whole purpose of dating is to find your person, right? Like, if you haven't found your person yet, you need to keep dating. And when you're exclusive is a time to cut off those other options to really dig into, like, do I see a future with this person? But that's when you're exclusive, and that exclusivity needs to come with some conditions, right? You don't just become exclusive with someone after a first date or even a second date. You don't know them yet. So I think once you get to know somebody, then you can become exclusive with them and cut off your other options to really investigate this one person. But I don't know. Like, I don't think women, personally, it just depends on however many people are asking you out. Like, I went on lots of dates with lots of different people for months before I was exclusive with my husband, because I was clear that, like, I don't want to just be somebody's girlfriend. I'm not, my end goal here is not to be your girlfriend and move in with you. My end goal is to find my husband. So if I don't know if you're my husband yet, I'm going to keep dating other people to figure out who is. Like,
So
when I met my husband, it was a Wednesday. We went on a first date on a Wednesday. The Sunday prior to that, I was also on a first date with somebody else. So, like, I think just date however many people you can date at the same time, and you don't have to put that much energy into it. I think what a lot of women are doing is putting way too much energy and thought into early relationships, which is why they feel like exhausted. But, like, I was on the apps and I didn't bother to learn anybody's name until I went on a date. Like, I don't know your name until we go on a date. So, like, things like that help me to keep my emotions in check and not get overly attached, because I'm not trying to memorize your name or where you went to school or get to know you over the phone or over this app. I'm going to go on a date with you and just keep dating the different people and you have to keep your emotions and your physical boundaries in place.
okay, very good. So there's a question in here, asking about your thoughts on divorce. You've obviously been divorced before, remarried. What are your thoughts about divorce, marriage? It should be last a lifetime. Multiple marriages. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts about all that?
Yeah, I think obviously the goal is to be with one person for life. That's what I would hope for each person to be able to find when it comes to marriage. And I don't have I don't have the negative sentiment toward divorce I think some Christians do have, where it's like, if you're divorced and you're remarried, it means you're committing adultery. Like, I know that there are some passages to advocate for that point of view, but there are also some passages that advocate for not staying in a situation where you're being abused, not staying in a situation where you're being continually cheated on. And there's a passage in the Old Testament, I forget exactly where, but God commands the Israelites to divorce their wives because they had married non-Israelite women, and that wasn't what God had ordained. And so, to me, I think divorce is something that is a personal decision for people. And at the time that I got divorced, I was an atheist, like I said, so I didn't have a biblical reason to stay married. But of course, I'm always going to hope that people stay married, but I'm never going to advocate that someone stays in an abusive or bad situation. Which is why I'm a dating coach, not a marriage coach. I'm trying to help people before they get to the point where they marry the wrong person.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So where can people follow you at? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I'm at Dr. Abby Aggie on all my platforms, so you can spell out the word doctor. And I'm on Instagram. I don't really post on TikTok anymore. I'm really trying to grow my Instagram. And I was on YouTube if you want to check out that series that I mentioned about leveling up where you are. But again, I'm not posting on YouTube, and the content is not as good as what I'm doing now since I'm improving every day. But yeah, at Dr. Abby Aggie.
Very good. Do you do any writings or anything like that? Substack or Medium or anything? Do you do any of
At
that?
the moment, no, just Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm planning to launch soon a course to help women with dating. And so look out for that course because it'll be in my Instagram bio when it's up.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on Dr. L's podcast. I definitely appreciate it. I apologize about the technical difficulties that I had last night, this morning with you. And I got to have some stern words from my producer. So
thank you for having me. I really appreciate the questions that you asked. And I know I can get a little bit like fired up when I talk about these topics, but I'm actually just really grateful that the conversation went this way. So I hope it doesn't come off as like me like being combative because I'm honestly genuinely just like excited about these topics.
You weren't combative at all.
I get on my soapbox and I'm like, ah.
No, I appreciate the passion. I appreciate the passion. I think you sounded to me like you know what you're talking about. And you know, it's good to have knowledgeable people who are in the space really trying to make a difference and trying to help. I think that we have a long way to go, in particular within the Black community. But you know, there's a problem, as you know, with going on with dating and mating, and everybody's complaining about it, right? I've done some videos about China complaining about it. Everybody's checking out. Men are checking out. They don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to get divorced. They're looking at divorce laws, looking at baby birth rates and all this kind of stuff, right? And my interest in it is, as a former police officer, you know, with family formations and strong family formations, a vast majority of these kids end up in the criminal justice system. So I tend to look at, that's why I'm looking at this, and that's why I look at education, you know, what's going on in the public schools, and you know what's going on. You know, this is all crazy.
This, but it's like if you wanted to destroy society, attack the marriages in that society.
Well, they've done a good job. They've done a good job, unfortunately. So thank you again
for having me.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming on. Yoli is up next. She's going to be on a show tomorrow night. So we're going to talk about financial decision making. So yeah. So anyways, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everyone to who's out there. Listen, you guys know I go buy lunch, so it's lunchtime. So if you guys want to buy me some lunch, I would really appreciate it. So you can send it to me. And hit the like button. I don't know where we're at with the likes, but hit the like button. If you watch this in the future, if you watch the recorded version, hit the like button. It's very important to make the algorithm grow and all that kind of good stuff. So go over to Dr. Abby's Instagram page, watch your videos, look for a course, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, you guys take care. Much love and peace.